Hey, welcome back to the Encounter Podcast, guys. We are excited to have you guys back and just excited for the topic that we're going to be talking about today. This topic can kind of be addressed in multiple different lights, whether that is just like general suffering caused by ourselves, or whether that's trials that the Lord, not trials, but tests that the Lord is putting us through. So today's topic is going to be like trials in Christian life, or adversity in the Christian life, I guess is how you can talk about it.
All right, so to start, we're going to talk about what trials and tests are. And honestly, like the other day, I was meeting with some of my youth group kids, and they came up with a super good definition, right? We were reading through James, and it talks about tests, like trials from the Lord, and then temptation. And they distinguished, like I was just listening, and they said that temptations are from the devil. The Lord doesn't tempt you because temptations want you to fail. They want you to fall and give in. Whereas tests and trials are the Lord allowing you to be in a situation where you have to rely on him to grow you to that point of relying solely on him. And in that, it's called the test, right? Because that tests where we truly are looking for that comfort and that hope and that strength. Because if we're looking for it in ourselves, we may be able to have a good attitude or endure through these things for a little while, but eventually it's going to catch up to us, right? But if it's the Lord, then we're going to be sustained through these. So,
yeah. So like whenever, like this verse we're going to talk about, whenever it talks about trials, like where do you think that that's falling?
I think trials are tests.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it says like trials of various kinds.
Mm-hmm. And so I think that temptation, there can be that, I mean, the Lord can use it for good too, right? Because he allows us to be tempted so that we have to go back to him. And so I think that he can use that, but he's never the initiator of a temptation, because temptation in itself
Looks for failure. Looks for sin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like those two definitions. Like temptation is strictly based on sin.
Mm-hmm.
Like its goal is sin. In trials or tests, its goal is to produce growth in the Lord.
Yeah, I think the center of temptation, like you just said, is the sin, and the center of tests are the Lord.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's even this time where it's like, oh, I'm in this temptation, or I'm struggling with this sin, right? Or I'm struggling with this trial. And we make our lives so much about that. Like we make our lives so much about the hardship rather than being with the Lord through it, that we can't do anything, right?
Yeah.
Because if I'm going through a trial, if someone close to me like is leaving me or has died, and that is my focus, like, then I'm not going to be able to turn that to Christ, because my focus isn't on him through it. It's just on that.
I think they go hand in hand though. Like I think there's equally, like, I guess if you're using the trial of somebody dying, like I think there's that time of grief, which then we do turn to the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. But without the Lord in it.
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause even in that time of grief, you're like, man, like I understand that you're doing this for a purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and you're still turning it to the Lord. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so we already talked about this a little bit, but the James 1 passage, James 1:2-4, it says, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." So, I mean, we already kind of talked about trials of various kinds.
Mm-hmm.
And those really being anything from, a lost relationship, like maybe a loved one passed away, or like hard financial times. Trials of various kinds literally means
Anything really.
anything that any opportunity that the Lord gives you to, like, that's a hardship to, like, grow in your faith, to, like, grow in your reliance and your trust on him. I like that he says, count it all joy. And then he follows it with trials of any kind. And I think it's going back to what you kind of opened with there, is like understanding that when we keep the Lord at the center of it, that's where we can find the joy. and understanding that the Lord is working this situation out for my better.
Yeah.
I mean, it literally says that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and steadfastness has its full effect. What's the NIV say that you like for verse 4?
Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and
Yeah.
complete.
I like the mature aspect because sometimes, I mean, if people are reading through here, they may see perfect and they're like, oh, so I can be made
Mhm.
perfect through hard times. And it's like, no, that's not what it's saying.
Yeah.
But it's saying that the Lord is allowing those trials to be opportunities for us to mature in our faith and for us to grow closer and intimate with Him,
Yeah.
and then understanding how He's working in our life and seeing that as well.
I think that trials and tests are like, we always see them and we're like, oh God, like, why are you putting me in this place? Right. But I think honestly, they're a vital part of the Christian life. And like, we're told that all throughout the Bible with refining and fire in this
Yeah.
picture. Right. But it's just kind of part of our human nature to not really learn to rely and trust on God as much in the super great successes rather than in the valleys. And so it's just so much easier for, I was reading in James the other day, chapter 2, I think, and it's talking about the rich man versus the poor man and how
Yeah.
there's like the church was distinguishing between the two. But then it talks about how it's easier for a person to come to know the Lord and rely on the Lord in those places of having nothing and poverty because they have not as many distractions, right? And so I
Yeah.
think that's why we can count it joy, because we don't have as many things distracting us from the Lord. Whereas riches, they can be great, they can be used for the Lord, and like we see that all throughout the Bible, but they provide more distractions to take us away from Him.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, I think even me and myself, like when I've prayed for things, I'm like, thank goodness the Lord didn't give me those things. Like over the past couple of years, I've prayed for a ton of things, and I'm like, oh, thank goodness the Lord didn't give me those, right? Because if He would have fulfilled my prayer request in that very moment, like if He would have said yes,
Yeah.
then I wouldn't be near to Him today, or as near. And so I can look back a couple years later and say thank you for working this out in your timing, because in this I had to rely on you. I had to look to you. My focus wasn't taken by
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah, I think that's part of the beauty of like the sovereignty of the Lord.
Yeah.
Just understanding that, like, there's the 4 responses to the prayer, to
Mhm.
prayer request that He gives us. He says no, like, no, that's like my answer is no. I'm not going to give you that. He says slow. He's like, yeah, it's going to come, but it'll come in its time. He says grow, like, hey, take
Mhm.
time, like I'm giving you this allotted time for you to grow, and then in the future I'll say yes to whatever that prayer request is. Or there's just go, and it's like, yeah, here it is. And so I think I think part of trials and like understanding the beauty of the Lord and His sovereignty is understanding that, we're in a spot like this. We're in a hard time, and we're praying like, Lord, like take this away. Just take it away.
Mhm.
And that's the easy way out. But if the Lord says no, or He says like grow, that's just as beautiful, if not more productive for us personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and understanding that in our relationship with Him, it's an opportunity for us to grow through the hardship.
Mhm. But there's this aspect of waiting on the Lord all throughout the Bible, and we see so many different people talk about that different ways. And it's simply like the Lord is still working regardless of if you see Him or not.
Yeah.
And just because you don't see Him, obviously, like he's still doing something. And you may not see that now, but we're called to wait on Him. And we know we can trust that in the future, regardless of if it's a year, 3 years, 5 years, or in heaven, we will see why the Lord did that. Because the Lord doesn't do anything in vain. He doesn't do anything without reason, right? And
Yeah.
so say I pray and I pray for healing and there's no healing, right? Who knows? Maybe my faith through my sickness is what leads another person to the Lord.
Yeah.
And it's like, don't discount what the Lord's doing just because it doesn't align with your will.
Well, just because it's hard for you.
Yeah.
Just because it's like not enjoyable in the moment, I guess.
Well, yeah, because like let's look back at the track record. The most painful, like unimaginable thing in the Bible, Jesus being on the cross, taking the weight of sin, shame, led to the most beautiful thing of us being with the Lord.
Yeah.
And so I think it also can come from this mindset. We can get into this like selfish mindset of, oh, well, it's all about me, right? And my life's not about me. When I surrender it to the Lord, it's about him. And then the Lord also uses that for other people,
Yeah.
right? And so when he's working through me for other people, then even though it may be hard for me, he's going to do something. He's going to do something in me, no doubt, because he's going to draw me nearer to him. But also those people around me are being impacted by that.
Yeah.
And so the Lord can bless you and the people around you in your blessing, but he can also bless you and the people around you even more in your lacking.
Yeah, he can bless in both situations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know, I was just kind of thinking about this while you're talking. When I was involved in Doxazo, when I was younger, there was a kid there. He was like severely handicapped, but he was like a counselor, and he had a beautiful heart for the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
But like obviously like a trial of his life was like his physical abilities.
Yeah.
But his heart for the Lord was so beautiful. And like he was just such a genuine guy. I mean, I think you literally went to high school with him. But like his heart for the Lord was just like so joyful, and he was always so happy, and like he couldn't even really talk, but like he could, but it was just like hard and just all this stuff. But it was just so beautiful to see the joy that he had, even in like a situation where I'd be like, man, that's so hard. Like, how do you even deal with that? But just to the joy that he had, just because he knew the Lord and he understood like he's using me in this situation, and just the joy he had understanding like one day this won't be who I am.
Yeah.
It was just so beautiful to see his heart.
Come on.
He's a great kid.
Oh no, that was good. I don't know what to say now.
I think obviously we're going to go through trials in our lives, which I mean the Lord's going to test us through, but I think a part of it, sometimes we get caught up like in the selfish aspect where we're just focusing on ourselves, like, oh, how can I get through this? And like we totally forget that the Lord is literally there. Like he wants to help us.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole point of it is that we will rely on him.
Yeah.
So the 1 Peter passage that we have here, 1 Peter 5:7 says, casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. And then it says in verse 10, and after you have suffered a little while, the God of all grace, who has called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that's just something we totally miss. Like we totally forget, like the Lord, like Lord, you want to help me. Like your helping me is based on my reliance on you.
Yeah.
It's not based on your ability to work in my life. It's based on my ability to turn to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really like that it says in verse 7 there, casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
you know, when you see someone, well, I don't know if like you've experienced this, but like you're like, hey, like you need help. And the person.
No, bro, I don't need help. I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
And you basically just watch them make a fool of themselves.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, it's so much easier to just like ask for help. And if you ask, like, let's say building this stuff, we took forever building this stuff, by the way, but we still got it. You know, if we had someone here who actually knew what they were doing and we asked for help, that could have been
If IKEA didn't build horrible products, let's shout that out.
But, you know, like when you ask for help, it goes so much quicker, but it also requires that humility.
Yeah.
Right? And we're the same way with the Lord. Like we don't take everything to him. And when we don't take everything to him, then everything takes so much longer.
Yeah.
And the Lord's still going to work through, like in and through you the way he wants to. But when we're not as humble in going to him with anything and everything, then it takes so much longer.
Yeah. Something that I think is also beautiful about the Lord is obviously he doesn't view situations like he doesn't act in situations like we would, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm like, yo, do you need help? And they're like, no. I'm like, bro, I see that you need help. Like just, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And there's like sometimes there's like that irritation or pride on our side.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, bro, listen, just let me help you. Like, stop being the way you are. But what I think is so beautiful about the Lord is that he's patient and loving. And no matter how long it takes, like when we get to him, when we realize that we really need his
Yeah.
help, he's just so like excited and like so filled with joy
Yeah.
that he's able to help us.
Yeah.
So don't have the perspective that you taking a long time to rely on the Lord is going to be like a problem in your relationship with him, or that he's going to be mad because you've taken so long.
Mm-mm.
But understanding that no matter when you come to him, he's like so excited and so filled with joy to help you.
And you don't even realize it, but like in that rejection of like going to him, like in not going to him, he's still helping you along the way,
Yeah.
right? And so, but he's doing it out of this place of love,
Yeah.
right? And he's still working with you. And obviously it's going to take so much longer when you go down your own path versus the Lord's. And you end up seeing that in the end.
Yeah.
But you can still look down the path that you decided to take and see the Lord's faithfulness through every single second of it.
Yeah. Yeah, even when we think we're doing it on our own.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just really like that First Peter passage because it shows that he cares about us. Like it literally says he cares about us. And then it says after a little while, you know, he who's called you for his eternal glory will restore you, he'll confirm you, strengthen you, and establish you.
And I think that's where we see so many people leave the Lord, is when we lose hope, because as humans, we are so focused on the now. It's like crazy. In my own life, it's wild that I just see the now. I just see what I want now. I just see what's happening now. And I completely forget about the future. I completely forget about the promises of the Lord and like eternal glory.
Yeah.
Right? And so when we get so discouraged and we don't take it to the Lord, who is the one who has a plan, right? Discuss it with the Lord and let him explain everything to you. Let him show you, right? But when we don't do that, then it's so easy to get discouraged because outside of the Lord, there's no hope.
Yeah. But it is cool how refreshing it is whenever we see, like whenever you've been living the way that you want to live and you haven't been relying on the Lord for a season. And then, there's a time where like you go back, maybe just like one time. You're like, you know what, Lord, like I do need help on this. Like anoint this situation. Like help me out. It's just so beautiful how refreshing that is.
Yeah.
And you just see that and you're just like, man, like this is what I've been missing out on. But it's beautiful because like the Lord, like he's going to help you regardless.
Yeah.
But it's just so cool like how refreshing that is to your soul. Because you're like, man, this is really what it's about. Like, I haven't been living the way I should, but like, thank you, Lord, for this reminder and this time that,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think that's cool. Because that's kind of just something I've been seeing in my life where like trying to focus on him, but getting distracted by getting caught up in my schoolwork or whatever. But then, at the end of the day, whenever you go to him, it's like, man, why wasn't I doing this all day, bro?
Yeah.
It's like, man, that was just so like peaceful and so refreshing and like just so, I don't know, just like so like restorative for my soul. So it is cool that whenever we do rely on the Lord is going to strengthen us.
Yeah.
I just think refreshment is just such a beautiful thing. Because all I can think about is like, bro, I'm just going so hard. And then I'm just kind of at, not necessarily a breaking point, but I'm just tired. And then I just like turn to rely on the Lord. And it's just like, oh yeah, like that's beautiful.
That rest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just like his spirit of peace and joy that washes over you. And just how like beautiful and refreshing that is. Because then that just gives you the energy and the, like, it just gives you the perspective of like, the Lord is with me through all of this. And so it's like, I can keep on going.
Yeah.
And I will keep on going because, he's with me. and he provides the strength and all that. So,
There we go.
yeah. Well, what's some application stuff that we got?
Practical applications. I mean, we'll say Philippians 4:6. The be anxious about nothing, but in everything with prayer and supplication make your requests. Oh, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving,
Yeah.
let your requests be made known to God, and let the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, guard your heart.
Guard your
Something
heart,
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just take everything to him. He doesn't think things are too big or too small for him, right? And he wants to help us in those situations, in every situation. So if there's anxiety or fear or any worry over anything, he wants to be your peace, your comforter, your counselor. So
Yeah, I mean, I would go back to the First Peter passage, 1 Peter 5:6-11, understanding like in verse 7 he cares for you, and then in verse 10 like after a little while, whether that's our time wise of a little while, or whenever it's the Lord's time of a little while, he will restore and refresh and strengthen you.
Yeah.
And don't forget the beauty in just resting in the Lord.
Yeah. And he's a personal God, right?
Yeah.
And so don't think there's something too small for him. Just like a close friend wants to walk through everything with you. They want to hear about the big, the small, the ups, the downs. God is the same way. He's that close, intimate friend as described in the Bible, where he wants to help you through everything.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a little like anxiety over a test, right? That's not too small for him. He doesn't have yes, there are bigger things going on, but he doesn't
see that
caught up
Yeah.
in dealing with other things.
Yeah. Don't ever think that there's a situation that the Lord wants you to get through before he wants you to come to him.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that in all these things, all these different trials of various kinds, from the small to the little, the Lord wants you to turn to him in all of them. So don't ever think that, the Lord's giving me this so that I can get over it by myself and then I'll be ready to be with him.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ever get caught up in that mindset. But understand that the Lord wants you to be with him. He wants you to rely on him in all the situations, in all these trials.
Yeah.
So.
He's our savior and our purifier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know we kind of talked about that over the whole episode, but that's just kind of something that I was thinking about. So.
There we go.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's it for this week's episode. So thanks for watching. See you guys.